What's up, guys? Ice Young and Cass Negley here with you for Yahoo Sports, and we're here to talk WNBA. First, shout out to the USA women's basketball team and men's basketball team for securing gold medals in the Paris Olympics. We are so proud of y'all. But now we're here to talk about WNBA because it's post-Olympic break, Cass. Every team has about 15 games left, and there's really a sense of urgency to win your games when you can, to move up in the standings and secure your spot, hopefully, for the playoffs. Quickly, let's run through the current WNBA standings. We have the New York Liberty at the top very clearly. They're 21-4. Connecticut Sun underneath them at number 2, 18-6. Then it's the Lynx at 17-8. They had a little bit of kind of a slow down curve towards right before the Olympic break with Collier out. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And then matched with them at the Seattle Storm at number 4, 17-8 as well. Now, it seems like these four have a game separation, and they have seemed pretty consistent throughout the first half of W season. What have you seen from them? What makes it seem like they're a little bit different than that middle of the pack?
Yeah, New York has really taken off. They've really come out of that finals loss with more chemistry. Sabrina Ionescu is playing some of her best basketball, definitely developed her game for them. Brianna Stewart helping lead that team. Minnesota was a surprise early on, won that Commissioner's Cup over the Liberty for some fun money. Connecticut has always been very good, as Marina Mabrey. I think the thing about Connecticut that's interesting is kind of the opposite of what we've always said about Indiana. They played a lot of teams that are lower in the standings right now, and so they're going to have to play some tough games down the stretch.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Marina Mabrey is bringing to Connecticut, right? We know what she brings, but I think meshing that with Alyssa Thomas, Dewana Bonner, Dejanay Carrington, Brianna Jones, but that is a very stacked starting five, and they still have some really good players coming off the bench. We talk about middle of the pack in terms of WNBA standings, and we've got some teams that are some young guns, but they're holding on right now in playoff position. Number 5 is the Aces. They're 16-8. At number 6 is currently the Phoenix Mercury. They're 13-12. Number 7 is that young guns, the Indiana Fever. They're 11-15, but finished very well, I thought, and played very well right before the Olympic break. And then you talk about number 8 currently right now, and that is Chicago Sky. They are 10-14. I feel like this middle of the pack specifically has battled, but we've seen these kind of 4 teams flip, reverse. Who do you feel like can maybe come out of that middle of the pack, or maybe can get a couple of more slots up in the rankings?
Much like you, I'm most excited about this group because I think there's a lot of potential in all of them. Obviously, the Aces were without Chelsea Gray for a while. As Kelsey Plum said, kind of messed with their winning recipe. So we're going to see them make up some games probably. But Phoenix is also really interesting to me. They had a lot of injuries. And the thing I keep thinking about is I talked to Sophie Cunningham right before the break about her vacation plans. And she was basically like, listen, this is what we did in 2021. The Mercury did not have a great time before the break. They came out of the break and I think won 10 straight it was to make the playoffs. And that was the year that we saw a 5 seed and a 6 seed in the finals. So I think, again, out of the Olympic break, a lot of teams have had rest together. Other teams have seen almost all of their starting lineup go overseas. We will see these teams maybe make some surprising runs to the finals.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I think now, too, for those rookies, they've had a very good sample size of W basketball. So they're no longer rookies to me, right? Yes, there's a Rookie of the Year race that we'll talk about, but they've played enough W basketball to be considered sophomores and to have had enough time during the Olympic break to work on their game and to make some adjustments. So totally agree with you. Okay, let's slide in now to our power rankings, what we feel like we've seen from these teams and where they should be ranked. We'll go with your top 4 to start, and then I'll let you give us kind of your rhyme or reasons for, each one. New York is at the top, and you and I both agree that New York is just separate right now. I think that they just had so much chemistry in the first half of their season. They look like they weren't messing around, honestly. And that's how you should look when you're trying to stop a team who wants to get a three-peat. At the 2/3, you have the Aces in Connecticut, or Connecticut and the Aces. And then number 4, Seattle, which you and I both agree are there. I guess let's start with this, Aces versus Connecticut, 2 and 3. Tell me what can happen to separate.
Well, the Aces finally have Chelsea Gray back, as we just said. So we're going to see them make up some games. I think they looked very tight heading into the break. I do think, though, what kind of impacts will these Olympians have on the team coming straight from Paris? I think Asia Wilson had tweeted like, oh, time for our all-star Olympic break. It was literally only Monday. I believe it was Monday. The Aces did not practice and they were back Tuesday. So is there fatigue there? But the power rankings are based strictly on what I saw out of the first half and what I think is going to happen in the first few games. Connecticut, really excited about what Marina brings. And I think we don't see these big trades often. So it's a huge X factor that Connecticut can add that other teams haven't added. They fixed an issue. They did not have good three-point shooting against New York, lost to them 3 times. So I think Marina will help them in that aspect, and maybe Connecticut can finally get over the hump.
I think all Connecticut fans love that you just said that. Finally get over the hump. It's really just what they need to do. I actually think the most critical piece about Marina's arrival there will be her passing. It will be like, can she continue to keep the flow of the offense the way that is and actually improve it? We know Alyssa Thomas sometimes is turnover prone. Can Marina Mabrey help to maybe fix some of those issues and connect the dots? And then will they be more lethal in transition, knowing that now they've got terrific perimeter three-point shooters, and they don't have to necessarily take it to the rack every time, especially if Alyssa Thomas is on the floor. I'm actually super excited for Seattle. I think that Seattle is extremely mature. You talk about Joel Loy, Nneka Ogwumike, Ezzy Magmagor, and then Skylar Diggins-Smith. And I feel like if they can get their defense more consistently on one accord, this second half of this season could get them up maybe a spot or two. But I felt like towards the first half of their season, the offense was good. I felt like their defense at times, though, wasn't consistent as one team, and therefore they dropped a couple of games. Okay, let's discuss our middle of the pack, because we know this is where it gets to the thick of it. For my 5, 6, 7, and 8, I have Minneapolis, Indiana, Phoenix, and Chicago. Your 5, 6, 7, and 8 are Indiana, Minnesota, Phoenix, and Chicago. So we agree on 7 and 8. Tell me why you give Indiana the edge over the Lynx.
In those last couple of weeks before the break, Caitlin Clark was averaging something like 13 assists per game. That is exactly what Indiana needs from her. They don't necessarily need her scoring 30 a game. This isn't Iowa. She doesn't have to lift that weight for them, but she does have to move the ball around. We're seeing teammates start to score off of that. We're seeing slightly better defense. And I think this Olympic break is going to help Indiana like almost no other team. They only had 1 Olympian. This is a second training camp. Caitlin has been going and going hard since probably August of last year, a full year. That's why I put them over Minnesota. Minnesota struggled a little bit after the Commissioner's Cup. They lost to some of the best teams, but to be the best, you have to beat the best. And we didn't see that from the Lynx in July.
Okay. Yeah, I completely agree with the weight that Caitlin is carrying, like at the point guard position for the Indiana Fever, and give them, a ton of compliments on the growth that you've seen other players experience. I thought Aaliyah Boston got a ton better towards that last 5 or 6 games, like better for her career, obviously, right? In the 2 short years that we've seen her. But I think for Caitlin, for me, the turnovers are the concerning aspect, because as we're getting towards the dangerous part of the season in which you got to get these games and they count, you cannot be giving up the ball at such a high rate, especially, right, if you're the main point guard on the floor that literally does not come off the floor. But I think there's a tremendous upside for them. What I like about the Lynx, because I like maturity, is that they're old, right? Is that Kayla McBride, Bridget Carlton, Alana Smith, like they're experienced. Courtney Williams, they're experienced. And so I also love right now that their defense in the first half of the season proved that they can defend with anyone. They can stop anyone from scoring the basketball. And then we know that they obviously can light it up. So I feel like for them as a mature and experienced team, and the way that they've kind of specialized in 3 and D this season, they could go very far in the playoffs. And we obviously know Cheryl Reeve knows how to win more than anyone else in this league. Final thoughts on our top 8 and what we're seeing right now from the power rankings. Anything that you want to let us know?
I think there can be a lot of movement. Kind of like I said earlier, this is in a little way like a new season. So we might see a lot of differences. I do want to point out that, we had talked about the standings, and these are our power rankings. Las Vegas does need to move up if they want to host playoff games, and that'll be huge, which we'll get into later. But both of us have them as like a 2-3, so maybe they will.
Absolutely. Okay. Aces can't play any games, so Asia can't afford to be tired. All right, let's move in now to talking about Asia in our MVP race. To me, it should be unanimous, like Asia Wilson. She's the best player in the world, and we don't just say that because we know that she is, and we just finished watching her compete against the other best players in the world and clearly shine through. What do you feel like this MVP race looks like? And maybe in terms of voting, what it should look like or could look like.
I think if it's unanimous, great.
Mm,
I think if it's not, then it's not.
mm,
I will probably vote for her right now. And I think actually the reasons she's my MVP this year are kind of the reasons why she wasn't my MVP pick last year. She did a lot of the carrying for the Aces without Chelsea Gray, both offensively and defensively. She's obviously on pace to set that scoring record, absolutely dominant in all parts of her game. And last year, I felt like Brianna Stewart, I voted for Alyssa Thomas, but Brianna Stewart had the edge over her for me because she was just most valuable to New York,
mm.
whereas Asia was not most valuable to Las Vegas. And so now this year, when you look at a player like Brianna Stewart or Alyssa Thomas, AT has more help in Connecticut than she had last year. And both Stewie and Sabrina are carrying that New York team. So I think it's a combination of Asia being the dominant player that she is, but also being incredibly valuable to Las Vegas and setting those records and doing everything that Las Vegas needs. I will say, though, now that Las Vegas is winning again, that will help her case. But
Yeah.
if they do lose some more and fall to 6 or 7, as a voter, I do think you have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the MVP, right, of the league should be on one of the best teams of the league. And I don't see the Aces slipping, right? I see them coming back from the Olympic break and yes, being tired, but also knowing that the target is on their back and everyone is banking on them being tired, right? Everyone is saying, "Oh, you have 4 starters who are in the Olympics. You all got to be tired," and they won't be. I just think there's some dogs out there in Las Vegas. Okay, let's get into Rookie of the Year race. That was a hot topic the first half of the season. Like I did a couple of games for CBS covering the WNBA, and that was kind of the halftime segment each time was how's it going? We had Angel Reese record, historic double-double numbers. We had Caitlin Clark record the first triple-double ever, and she's averaging over 8 assists. Cass, where do you see the Rookie of the Year race?
If I had a ballot in front of me right now and I were filling it out, for me, it is just a fairly easy choice to go with Caitlin Clark. My bias is towards a point guard doing a great job leading in offense. I think it's really tough to do as a rookie coming into the WNBA. I think it's really tough to do for a franchise that's been at the basement for a really long time, had a lot of struggles. It wasn't that long ago that right before Aaliyah Boston went there, it was a joke to join Atlanta.
Yes.
Um, and to do it with all the defensive attention that she got, especially early against some of the best teams. I mean, she is the 4th player in league history to average at least 15 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. She's the only rookie to do that. She's packing the stat sheet. Indiana's offense looks really good and is starting to come together better. Her 8.19 assists per game are 5th all time, right below 4 seasons from Courtney Vandersloot, an incredible point guard in her heyday, and obviously
One of
still
the
playing
best.
for Liberty. I know that Angel Reese is going up against some of the league's best players at the forward position, at the center position. I just don't love the shooting percentage. I do think, though, what I will say about the competition, Caitlin Clark's ceiling or her basement is so high because we expect so much from her after seeing her at Iowa.
Right.
Whereas Angel Reese, many of us did not expect her to play as well as she's playing. There was a chance, depending on what team she went to, she wouldn't play at all. She's playing incredibly well, and I think better than many people expected her to. But I think that's what's creating some conversation in the race.
Yeah. One, I think they're both playing very well. I think they're both facing, pressures, right? And a whole bunch of eyeballs on them. And I think they both also are very confident in them playing well, right? And so they're getting a target every night on their backs. Like, if you think Asia Wilson is not like, yo, I don't want Angel to get any rebounds near me, we're not thinking that these women are, you know, competing, right? And so I say that to say that I think, you know, Caitlin carries more of a weight for her team because she's at the point guard position for sure. And she does not come off the floor, right? And so when you look at that, yes, I agree that our expectations for her are higher. Also because she scored the most points that we ever seen in college basketball score. And so now we just think that she's got to be amazing, right? And awesome. And especially doing that right away. Where my concern lies with this race in particular to Caitlin is her turnover numbers. I actually really feel like her averaging 5.6 turnovers a game is astronomical, like way too many for a point guard whose team right now is in the top 8 and could be going to the playoffs. And so what I'll say is that, yeah, like, she's human, right? She played a new level of basketball. She had to get adjusted. It didn't look great and it hasn't looked pretty. And the number reflects that. She averages 8.3 assists per game. When you do the math, that's 2.7 assists that she's averaging, right? The next person that averages the most turnovers in the W, if Caitlin averages 5.6, is Alyssa Thomas at 3 points. Yeah, at 3.6, right? And so I think what I'm looking for Caitlin in the second half of the season to solidify the rookie of the year race is for her to be consistent and taking care of the basketball, especially making sure that her team gets into the playoffs, because we can't have and afford almost 6 turnovers a game when you're trying to win a playoff series or even get there, especially for this young team. But otherwise, I agree with you that I think right now Caitlin has the edge over Angel Reese. Cass, what are your expectations moving into the second half of the season? First, I want to get your expectations for the reigning champs that are trying to three-peat in Las Vegas Aces.
I do think they will move up the standings like we had talked about. They're going to keep going. They're going to collect some wins. This is a veteran group. It's also a group that has always rallied around being dismissed or having things go against them. And so this civil lawsuit by Dearica Hamby being filed this week, I think certainly will be a rallying cry for them again. But Las Vegas faces one of the most difficult schedules down the back end. So they'll play New York, Connecticut, and Minnesota twice each. But I do think they will climb up the rankings.
Okay. I agree with you. I think, like, it's a tough road, but I think they're built for it. I completely agree that they like being resilient in the face of adversity. The quote that comes to mind is when Kelsey Plum last year was talking about all the things that were going on. We've been tried and arrested, and like, okay. So I totally agree with you. Expectations. One, I have an expectation for the Minnesota Lynx to stay top 4. I really do think that they are a mature team, and the way that they're playing right now, they can win a championship. They catch somebody on not a good day and they defend wholeheartedly, and then they knock down threes at the rate that they've been doing with their offense, and they play with such a high IQ. I think they can catch someone slipping one day and beat them. I will also say that my sleeper team to watch that we haven't talked about is the Dallas Wings. Dallas Wings right now are 12th. They are 6-19. I know what you're thinking, like, Isis, you're normally on point. What's going on here? Satu Sabali is back, is what's going on here. The most improved player last year in the W is back. She was out the first half of the season for the Dallas Wings. She played during the Olympic break with Germany. She played well, in fact. She looked good, not 100% herself, but she looked very good. And I'm excited to see her come back and pair with Natasha Howard, Arike Agumbawale, Tiara McCowan, Maddie Segrist, hopefully coming back to Dallas. I'm really excited to see what they can do. And I think that if they gut it out the next 15 games and they play with a sense of urgency, they could find themselves in the top 8.
Okay, that's interesting.
A bold prediction.
They have, what, about 5 games to make up?
Mm-hmm.
But on that note, like, I do agree that we're going to see some surprises. You know, as we said, the last Olympic cycle of 5 versus 6 finals. We know that the Aces are trying to climb up. And I think the way the WNBA postseason is structured, because maybe the Aces go on the road, like, we could see them upset. It's a quick best of 3, and then it's best of 5 for the semifinals and finals.
Well, so many exciting things to look forward to for the second half of the WNBA season. Each team has about 15 games left, and games start again on Thursday. WNBA is back. Stay tuned for more of our coverage.